Okay, so getting back into our coverage over X Factor as a way to kind of give us the different things we need to know when it comes to the idea of the Mutant Massacre, we're going to pick up with issues number 2 and 3. Now, this is going to give us the origin of another character who was somewhat important when it came to the Mutant Massacre storyline, and that would be the character Artie. Now, I'm going to remind you guys who Artie is later on in the video, but let's not forget that he was the reason why X Factor technically got involved in the Mutant Massacre story. And so getting into today's video, we do pick up with X Factor number 2. Now, when it comes to the opening pages of this book, we do pick up with Jean Grey at first. Now, when it comes to Jean Grey, we're seeing her having a nightmare. Now, when it comes to her nightmares, it's really more about the idea of what we learned in our last couple videos. And we have learned that when it came to Jean Grey, she was never the Phoenix. See, what happened was when she was close to death, Phoenix took Jean Grey's body and put her inside some kind of cocoon as a way to heal her up. And then you have the Phoenix pretend to be Jean Grey as Jean Grey tried to heal up inside that cocoon. And so we have learned that Jean Grey was never the Phoenix in the Phoenix nor Dark Phoenix saga. But of course, she still has nightmares about the idea of meeting the Phoenix. But when she does wake up, she kind of reminds us what is currently happening in the world of X-Men comics. And honestly, I'm not going to sit down and try to dive into what's going on in the other 2 X-Men books. I want to focus more on just X Factor. Now, when it comes to Jean Grey, she also realized that there's something wrong with Scott Summers. And the thing is, with Scott Summers, around this point in time, he was a married man. He was married to Madeline Pryor. Now, around this point, the X-Men had no idea that she is a clone of Jean Grey. To them, it's just some random woman that looked just like Jean Grey, which honestly, that looks really bad on Scott Summers, because you can technically say that he only married her because she looked like Jean Grey. But here's the thing, he just left Madeline and their child to come over here to help form X Factor, but also because he got word of Jean Grey being alive. And so it's Angel saying, you have to talk to both women. You have to tell Madeline that Jean Grey is alive. But the thing is, you have to be a husband. You have to be a father. Go home to your family and establish an idea of rebuilding what you have broken. But at the same time, you gotta tell Jean Grey that Madeline Pryor is your wife, that you got married. You had to move on because things happened when she was gone. And so it's Angel really giving Scott good advice, but it's Scott kind of saying, I don't know if I can do that. Like, it's not that easy to talk to either women. Now, once he says that, you do have Angel walk out. He runs into Cameron Hodge. Now, Cameron Hodge is the advertiser for X Factor. His main goal is to get them out there in the world so that it gets some more clients for different jobs. Now, when it comes to Cameron, we see that him and Angel are talking about where Iceman and Beast are at. And you have those 2 characters currently out looking for an apartment to live in. And so we do pick up with Iceman and Beast, who are currently out there trying to find some kind of apartment in New York. But the problem is, it is New York, so it's not really that affordable when it comes to the idea of paying rent for an apartment. Now, when it comes to Beast and Iceman, while they are out, we kind of find out that Beast is going to meet up with his old girlfriend. Now, this is not a new character at all. Matter of fact, she first appeared in the early days of X-Men comics. But either way, her name is Vera Cantor. Now, when it comes to Vera, she was completely different back in the early days of X-Men comics in the 60s. Now she's really more pro-mutant when it comes to politics, but also she wants to make sure that mutants get fair rights when it comes to the idea of them being treated wrong. And so as soon as you have Hank and Iceman see her, they're kind of surprised that one, her style changed, her hairstyle changed as well, but two, the way she is talking. And Beast is wondering what in the world had happened to this woman. But we're also left with the idea that maybe her and Beast will probably get back together. Now we do jump over to Cyclops and Jean Grey. Now when we do, we see the two characters getting ready to train Rusty Collins. Now remember, when it comes to Rusty Collins, later on in X-Men comics, he'll be called Fire Fist. But in our last video, he was the first mutant that X-Factor had saved. Now remember, when it comes to X-Factor, they pretend to be mutant hunters. They go out of their way to hunt mutants, and they pretend to be regular humans while doing it. But in reality, their main goal is to help mutants, bring them in, and then try to teach them how to control their powers, like Charles did back in the old days of X-Men comics. Now with all that being said, Rusty was the first person they had saved. And so you have Cyclops and Jean Grey trying to train him. Now at first, when it comes to the training, everything seems okay. But after a while, you have Jean Grey trying to push him too fast. He gets upset because powers are technically not under his control completely just yet. And so he storms off. Now, this just leaves Cyclops and Jean Grey alone in the room, which means that it looks like it could be time for the two characters to actually talk to one another about the idea of what in the world is going on with Cyclops. But you have Cyclops still not ready to tell Jean Grey that he had moved on, got married, and had a child with his wife. And so he just walks away. Now, that is when we jump over to Beast and Iceman. Now, when we do, it's the two characters still hanging out with Vera, and we're still kind of left to wonder the possibility of Beast and her getting back together. Except, that is the moment where they are attacked by someone known as Tower. Now, this is Tower's first appearance in X-Men comics. Matter of fact, when it comes to Tower, he only appears about 13 times in all of Marvel comics. But when it comes to Tower, he has the ability to change his size. Very similar to Hank Pym being Ant-Man or Giant Man or Yellow Jacket. Either way, when it comes to Tower, that is his ability. Now, it also seems like he does have some extra strength involved as well. And so when it comes to Iceman and Beast, because he was able to catch the two guys off guard, he was actually able to defeat both of them, grab Beast, and get the heck out of there. Because we kind of find out that Tower is working for somebody else. But the question is right now, who in the world is he working for? Because all we see is him taking Beast to a car, and him and Beast and our third mysterious character drive away. And so Beast has been kidnapped. Now we have to jump over to Cyclops, and the reason why, because it's really more of Cyclops kind of realizing that maybe Angel is right, that he should go ahead and call up his wife, Madeline Pryor, see how she's doing, try to talk to her, try to smooth things out. Unfortunately, when he does call, his call can't go through because apparently that line, that number no longer exists. And so unfortunately, when it comes to Cyclops, he now lost his only way to actually communicate with Madeline unless he flies back home to have the conversation with her. And so while you have him being very angry, that is when he gets word that something is going on. We already know what, it's Beast being kidnapped. And so then you have X-Factor go over to Vera's apartment. Now when they do arrive, you have them pretend to be more of like X-Factor, the mutant hunting team, because they got a call that a mutant was here and grabbed a hostage. And of course the mutant would be Tower. Now the real reason why they came here was to be able to talk to Bobby, but to also talk to Vera about the idea of who in the world had possibly kidnapped Beast. Now, we do jump over to Beast to kind of find out who had kidnapped him, and that would be Carl Maddox. Now, when it comes to Carl Maddox, he was actually a scientist, a leading scientist for a company known as Brand Corporation. Now, when it came to Brand Corporation, their main goal was to hopefully find a way to cure the mutant gene, to turn mutants back into, well, humans. Now, here's the thing. He was the leading scientist until Beast got hired and took his job. Now, that was a storyline where you have Beast try to cure himself. Unfortunately, his plans did not work out. Instead, Beast turned himself into a blue, hairy creature that we all love in today's world. But either way, when it comes to Carl, his main goal is to have Beast work on that project once again to hopefully save his son Artie. Now, we have met Artie back in our coverage over the Mutant Massacre. And remember, when it came to Artie, he cannot communicate like normal. No speech, no sign language. He has to talk in a different kind of way, which is using his mutant ability, where he is able to connect his mind to your mind and read your thoughts. And then he'll project different images on what he is trying to tell you, or those images can tell him what you are actually thinking. Now, with all that being said though, when it comes to Artie, when he did gain his mutant ability, it changed his body appearance. And this was something huge when it came to the X-Men comics around this point in time, to really establish the idea that there are some mutants who look normal and others who don't. Now, we already saw some mutants in the past who kind of got, the wrong end of the stick when it came to their mutation. But around this point, it was really more Marvel saying, no, this time we're trying to hit it hard, that there are a lot of mutants out there. When they do gain their mutant ability, their body also changes as well. Unfortunately, a lot of times, not for the greater good. Now, something else to mention is that when it comes to Carl, he tried his best to make sure that all his tracks were covered up. And what I mean by that is, when it came to Carl, he called in X Factor. Because remember, the world believes that X Factor is a group of humans who are going out of their way to hunt down mutants. And so he called up X Factor to go after Tower, to get rid of Tower so that no one could use Tower to hopefully find him and Beast. The problem is though, when it comes to Carl, he has no idea that X Factor is honestly not a group of humans, but instead a group of mutants. And so when they do arrive, they do use their powers to actually stop Tower, to say, hey man, listen, if you are able to help us out, we'll help you out. The only thing we need to know is that who is in charge and where we can find our friend. And so really, when it comes to Carl's plans, well, that plan backfired very quickly. Now, while you had X Factor fighting against Tower, we also come to find out that Carl wants to make sure that the new cure actually works. And so after using his son's abilities to read the mind of Beast to be able to put the cure together, he's all like, listen, I want to make sure it works, but I want to make sure it works before I use it on my son. And so you have Carl use the actual project on Beast. And so now Beast is going through the entire process of the possibility of being turned back into a human. Now, when we jump into X Factor number 3, we do pick up with Carl still continuing his experiment on Hank. Now, while that is going on, that is the moment where you do have Artie go over to his father to show his father images of what's currently going on. And of course, we know that right now you have Tower getting ready to tell X Factor who's behind Beast kidnapping, but also where to find Beast and where to find Carl. Now, this is where we begin to see what Artie is actually able to do, because at first, all we saw that he was able to connect his mind with other people's minds to kind of see what they are thinking and then project those images for both to see. Now we come to find out that he kind of has the ability to control your mind, to kind of make sure you are unable to do something that you were trying to do. And so when it comes to Artie, his goal is to control the mind of Tower, to make sure that Tower does not tell X Factor where in the world is Carl, Beast, and him is at. Now, after a while, you do have Tower being able to actually break free. And when he does, he can then begin the process of telling X Factor where you can find Beast and where you can find Carl and also Artie at. Now, here's the thing, because right after he does tell our heroes, you have X Factor trying to recruit Tower. And when it comes to Tower, he says, no, that's not my idea when it comes to being a mutant. I'm not down with the idea of helping others. I'm down with the idea of using my powers to make some money. And so he leaves. And this was kind of a problem with Marvel Comics around the time. And what I mean by that is, when it came to Marvel, they would create random X-Men characters who will only appear in a handful of books and then just disappear to never be seen again. And Tower is one of those characters. Again, he only appeared about 13 times, and 2 out of 13 times was this storyline right here. Now we do jump over to Cameron, and when we do, we currently see him talking to Vera. And when it comes to Vera, she wants to know that if Cameron was able to get some kind of update about what is currently going on with X Factor. Are they getting close into saving Beast? But unfortunately, he has no information for her at all. Now, with that being said, when it comes to Cameron, that is the moment where he is confronted by Senator Thompson. Now, when it comes to this senator, he's really down with the idea of mutants actually being able to have rights, to be able to live alongside with humans. But here is something else I do want to mention. When it comes to Senator Thompson, he's also trying to help out Warren and X Factor achieve greatness with their operations. But unfortunately, he has some bad news for them, because he brings over a secret file that is technically labeled as, top secret. But to say that in this file, it's going to show you guys that X Factor is really doing more harm than good when it comes to the idea of helping out mutants. Now, we do jump back over to X Factor, and when we do, we see X Factor arriving at the facility that Carl is holding Beast at. Now, we kind of find out that this facility is actually a research center. Matter of fact, a top secret research center. And that right there is going to be very important for the ending of this storyline, because while you do have X Factor look around as a way to break in, you have the 4 characters break up into 2 teams. So you have Cyclops and Angel go one way, while you have Jean Grey and Iceman go the other way. And it leads into a lot of pages of our heroes just fighting their way down to the lowest level of the research center to hopefully get to Beast in time. But while you have our heroes trying to fight to get to their friend, you have Carl continuing to run his experiment to hopefully find the idea if his actual project is going to work. Can he make a cure for Artie? It all comes down to Beast. If Beast does turn back to normal, then he'll use that serum on his son. But getting back to our heroes, you do have our heroes being able to actually reach the lowest level to get close to Carl. Now, this is the moment where we kind of learn why Carl is doing all of this for, which we already know why. Because of Artie, he is trying to turn his son back into normal. But once you have Carl tell X Factor why he did all this for, it now comes down to the idea of what happens now. Now, we already know when it comes to X Factor, their main goal is to get Beast the heck out of there. But at the same time, you didn't have Carl ask X Factor to go ahead and take Artie with them. And this is where Artie comes from. And the reason why, because he reminds us this is a top secret base. Meaning that when it comes to the security team, they are told to kill on sight. No matter what what in the world is going on. If someone breaks in, you hunt them down, you shoot them down, and you ask questions later if they survive your bullet. And so right now, the security team is coming down here, and they will kill anybody who looks like a mutant. And they have no idea that Artie was down there. And so if they see Artie, they're going to shoot Artie, they're going to shoot X Factor, and they're also going to shoot Carl as well. And so it's Carl again saying, take my son, take him with you, because listen, at least he will able to have a life. Even though he is a mutant, at least he will be able to have a life to live. So take him. And so X Factor leaves with Artie, but unfortunately Carl stays behind to buy them some time. But Carl dies. And so that is the end of Carl, but now we see how Artie had joined the team. Now we do see our heroes go back over to the base of X Factor. Now when they do arrive, you have Jean Grey corner Cyclops because she's really tired of the idea of being avoided. She wants to know what in the world is currently going on when it comes to him not telling her something. And so it seems like this is going to be the moment that Cyclops is finally going to tell Jean Grey, okay, fine. So you want to know what in the world is going on with me? Okay, I'll tell you. So I got married. But he doesn't tell her. And the reason why, because right before he is able to say it, they get called away because Beast wakes up after being knocked out for so long. And so when X Factor arrived in the medical room, well, Beast looks normal again. He's back to his original state when Stan Lee made him back in the 1960s. And so it's like, okay, so no more blue hairy Beast. We're now going true old school Beast again. Where can we go with this? And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.